Hey everyone, I'm Ben Norton, and you are listening to Multipolarista. Today, I am joined by a friend of the show, the Pakistani scholar Junaid Ahmad, and we're going to be talking about the situation in Pakistan. I've done a series of episodes discussing the US backed coup that removed the democratically elected Prime Minister Imran Khan and installed an unelected coup regime, and it has been very repressive. We recently did an episode in which we discussed how the coup regime charged Imran Khan with bogus terror charges and also banned the transmission of his speeches. And more recently, the coup regime went to the extreme lengths of banning Imran Khan, the most popular politician in Pakistan, from public office. At the same time, the coup regime, which is not elected, there has been no election to support this regime. It has been uh, growing closer to the United States and to Britain. The chief of army staff, General Bajwa, who is really the power behind the throne of the coup regime, one of the most powerful figures in the country, he visited the United States and he visited Britain. And we'll talk about those meetings. He discussed potentially normalizing relations with apartheid Israel. The former Prime Minister Imran Khan had always supported Palestine. He also had very close relations with China, and the United States is trying to pressure Pakistan to reduce its relations with China. And Imran Khan had also greatly improved Pakistan's relations with Russia. And we now see that the new coup regime has been supporting Ukraine in the proxy war and criticizing Russia. So there's basically been a 180 on Pakistan's formerly independent foreign policy. It was formerly independent under Imran Khan and is now very subordinate to the United States. So I'm joined by one of the best guests to analyze this situation, Junaid Ahmad. He is a scholar in Islamabad, Pakistan. He teaches law, religion, and world politics, and he's the director of the Center for the Study of Islam and Decoloniality. Junaid, it's always a pleasure having you. Let's start with the latest news of the banning of Imran Khan from politics. I also do want to talk about the political violence. We saw that a very prominent Pakistani journalist, Arshad Sharif, who spoke out against the coup regime and had fled the country to Kenya, he was murdered. He was shot in the head in a horrible case. I do want to talk about that, but let's start with the more headline news around the world. That is that the coup regime has barred Imran Khan from office in the future. And of course, if there was an election, polls show that he would by far win the election. He would be the most popular candidate. So this means that basically, if there even is an election, it can't be a fair election. What are people in Pakistan saying about this decision to try to ban Imran Khan from politics?
Well, first of all, Ben, I want to thank you for having me on your show again. It's always a pleasure, not just for me, but for many of my students and colleagues here in Pakistan, that at least someone out there wants to get a different perspective about what's going on in Pakistan than what you will get both in the mainstream and, unfortunately, the alternative or independent media in the West. So it's wonderful to be back with you, Ben, but it's not so wonderful in terms of the conditions that we're confronting here in Pakistan. I think that we certainly must condemn the incredible tragedy that's taken place, the killing of Arshad Sharif, a journalist, very well respected, and who has been a critic of virtually everyone, including even of Imran Khan. But we can get into the details of that a little bit later on. What has been happening since Imran Khan was removed from power in early April has been a non-stop series of measures by this new what people call the imported government, imported government from Washington, that was facilitated by both the Chief of Army Staff, General Bajwa, as well as, of course, the U.S. Embassy. So what this imported government and this regime has been up to since day one in coming to power is by any means necessary, by crook and by hook, trying to eliminate Imran Khan from the political scene in Pakistan. You had mentioned a couple of things which are sound so bogus and almost hilarious, but it also shows how desperate they are to get rid of him. The initially implicating him on terrorist charges, then on and just recently now about disqualifying him for elections because of some gifts that were received that were not properly accounted for. We're talking about politicians in power right now that have stolen billions of dollars from this poor country of Pakistan. And so people can see right through this. I mean, I think even the harshest critics of Imran Khan can see right through this and are embarrassed by what this government has been up to since it's been in power, having no concern about how to actually try to stabilize the economic situation in the country and do something about the massive inflation and so on, but rather one single track goal of trying to get Imran Khan out of power, and for the very obvious reason that he is undoubtedly the most popular politician in the country. The crowds that he has been able to mobilize in city after city after city, uh, the guy has a lot of stamina. We have to give him that, whether you like him or not. It has been incredible that he's just been going from one city to town, and large numbers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands will come out. And so everyone knows this. And Ben, it's the important thing to remember. We're talking now. Okay, now we're almost about to reach November. And this happened late March, early April. That is the ouster of Imran Khan from power. And that momentum of support has still been sustained, including through the heat of the summer and through the devastating floods that have affected Pakistan. And so it's abundantly clear that there's actually no one that even comes close to the popularity of Imran Khan. And so we are now at a situation where Khan has been calling for during all of these months for for elections to take place to see who is the most popular in the country. The other political parties have a long history. They have 30, 40 years behind them. If they believe they are popular, they should contest in elections, but they have been preventing that. The Chief of Army Staff, General Bajwa, has been preventing that for precisely the reasons that I've mentioned. So finally, just now, Imran Khan has gone through with his quote unquote threat, which is to have a long march, descend upon Islamabad, peaceful march to descend upon Islamabad, coming from Lahore on this coming Friday, the 28th. So this is where we are at right now, Ben.
And I've had you on in the past, Junaid, to talk about the very large protests going on since the coup, even in the lead up to the coup and after. Some of the largest protests in the history of Pakistan. And you've said that even people who supported Imran Khan and his party PTI were actually surprised to see the massive support, the massive shows of support of all across the country. Since then, there have been, I think, 2 local elections, and his party PTI won those local elections in a landslide. And
that's a very important point. Yeah, sorry,
go ahead.
Ben.
Talk about the local elections. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. So there's obviously when the ouster happened, the decision was made by Imran Khan's political party to resign en masse from parliament. Now, by-elections now started to take place for some of these seats in the National Assembly, and particularly in the province where Imran Khan's government, his political party, sorry, PTI, is in power, KPK. There were elections that were taking place there, and elections in Punjab as well as in Karachi. The PTI won 6 out of 7 of those seats. It actually should have won that 7th seat as well, but there was some corruption there. And there were some other by-elections within the Punjab Provincial Assembly that the PTI Imran Khan's party has won as well. I think that just for some context, it's important for viewers and listeners to know that this Imran Khan and PTI, this is a new political party. This is not like the other political parties that have 40 years of experience behind them. This is a party, barely 2 decades old. I mean, by 2010, there was one member of the PTI in parliament, and that was Imran Khan himself, no one else. So, for this political party to make these types of gains in not only in the province of KPK, but also in the heart of Punjab, and Punjab, the largest, most populous province of Pakistan, has always been dominated by the Sharif brothers, the House of Sharif. Right now, Shehbaz Sharif is the prime minister. He's the younger brother. The older brother is Nawaz Sharif. And so to make a dent into their stranglehold of political life in Punjab is really saying something, and in Karachi as well. And so if we're talking about a real national political party right now, there's only one, and that is PTI. And it's remarkable since it's such a young political party. But you're absolutely right. If we needed any evidence of how popular Khan is, then he just, almost just very casually, almost even jokingly, said that, sure, we'll field some candidates in these by-elections. And all of them won by PTI candidates, reflecting what we all know, the popularity of Khan and his political party.
Yeah, Pakistani politics is not dissimilar from U.S. politics in the sense that there have really been kind of two parties that are very similar, kind of corrupt neoliberal parties that have dominated politics: the PML, Pakistan Muslim League, and the Nawaz Sharif faction, which is the more conservative faction, a more conservative party, and then the PPP, which is kind of like the Democratic Party in the U.S. And PPP has largely dominated the Sindh province, like Karachi, and the PMLN has largely dominated Punjab, right? So what you're saying is that kind of two-party dictatorship, like in the U.S., the Republicans and Democrats, it was broken by this new party, PTI, created by Imran Khan. And of course, the PTI is the Movement for Justice. That's the name, Insaf, justice. And it's like in the U.S., a third party being created that could break the chokehold of those two parties. It's pretty incredible, and it's easy to see why the political establishment fears Imran Khan.
Right. I think that exactly that's the point that I was trying to hit home. People should realize that in the United States and many countries where these duopolies exist, supposedly two parties in the United States, both of them are basically a single war party or a corporate party with two branches. But these duopolies in most societies, I mean, we cannot actually conceive of a third party emerging that can not only emerge on the political scene but also win power. So yeah, this is absolutely extraordinary that Khan has been able to do this, and it's obviously clearly related to the man himself and his career as both a very well respected, obviously, cricketer, but beyond that, a great philanthropist. And someone who has always been considered to be a man of integrity and credibility and honesty. So I think that, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a factor that we often forget. That look, it's not a third party to come into a mafioso type political system that Pakistan has, where these two political parties. By the way, these two political parties you mentioned, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Sharif group, and the Pakistan People's Party of the Zardari Bhutto. They also happen to be the two wealthiest families in the country, and people can,
Not a coincidence.
and I don't think there's any coincidence there. For them, politics has been about making money. That's it. That's all they've done since the 1990s. They come into, it's a game of musical chairs played. They come into power, make as much money as they can, go out and come back in. That's what's been happening over the past, say, 30 years.
Yeah, and of course, the current unelected Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, you mentioned, he's the brother of the former other Sharif Prime Minister who's in the UK, fleeing after he was imprisoned for corruption. And the current, unelected Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, he was being investigated for blatant corruption, and the court had to put a pause on the corruption investigation in order to allow him to come into power in this US-backed regime. But I want to talk about General Bajwa. He is the chief of army staff. He is the top army official, top military official. And of course, the military is very influential in Pakistan. It plays a big role in the political system. And this October, he just visited the United States. And here is a tweet from the U.S. Defense Secretary on October 5th, Lloyd Austin. And there's a photo of him with General Bajwa, and he celebrates the 75th anniversary of U.S. relations with Pakistan. He said they discussed our long-standing defense partnership in areas of mutual interest. I should point out, speaking of corruption, that Lloyd Austin, U.S. Defense Secretary, until he became the top U.S. military official, he was on the board of directors of Raytheon, the top U.S. Arms manufacturer. So I mean, there you go. There's also a bunch of corruption in the United States itself. But anyway, here's an article in Voice of America, which is a U.S. government propaganda organ, represents, it's created by the CIA. It represents Washington's worldview. And it's from October 7th. Pakistani army chief's U.S. visit seen as bid to redefine ties. And they go in here, they talk about the factor of Afghanistan. Of course, Imran Khan had opposed the U.S. war in Afghanistan. He also opposed the U.S. attempts to create a drone base for the U.S. to carry out drone strikes in Afghanistan after the U.S. left Afghanistan. The U.S. wanted to open a drone base in Pakistan. And there have since the coup against Imran Khan, there have since been reports that the U.S. is now using Pakistan to launch drone strikes in Afghanistan. And this article in VOA also points out the China factor, and it notes that since the end of the Afghanistan war, relations between Washington and Islamabad will largely be determined by the geopolitical competition, global competition between the U.S. and China. So the U.S. is trying to pressure Pakistan to weaken its alliance with China. And this also brings us to an article that you yourself have been sharing on social media. And that is an article from Nikkei, which is a Japanese media outlet linked to the Japanese business class. It's called Pakistan's Top Gun Seeks U.S.-China Balance Before Retirement. It talks about how General Bajwa is on the verge of stepping down. And this article quotes anonymous U.S. officials who know about the meeting between General Bajwa and U.S. diplomats and U.S. military officials. And they say that he was seeking nothing less than a new arrangement with the U.S. A U.S. official familiar with the proceedings said that Bajwa presented a vision for a bilateral relationship, much like the Americans' understanding with South Korea. And I should point out to listeners that South Korea is still militarily occupied by the U.S. Yes. There have been tens of thousands of U.S. troops in South Korea since the 1950s. So when he says a relationship like the U.S. relationship with South Korea, we should definitely interrogate what he means there. And this anonymous official said that General Bajwa told them that he wants Pakistan to be a strategic partner of the U.S. And he said he also wants the U.S. to invest in Pakistan. And then you go down and you see that the U.S. removed Pakistan from the Financial Action Task Force's terrorism financing gray list after major lobbying by Bajwa, which shows, again, how the U.S. uses so-called terrorism as a political tool. Like when it accuses Iran supposedly of supporting terrorism, it's obviously politically motivated. And if you go down further in the article, they point out that Bajwa offered to change Pakistan's position on a wide range of regional issues including the prospect of opening up relations with apartheid Israel. And also, sources said US officials cautioned Bajwa about Pakistan's proximity to Beijing. So this article really dispels everything out. The US is pressuring Pakistan and the military to weaken its alliance with China and to normalize relations with apartheid Israel. This is, of course, Junaid, this is something that you and I have been saying for many months since the beginning of the coup. And now we have mainstream media outlets coming out pretty clearly and saying this is what's happening behind the scenes. So I'm sorry that was a very long question there, but I'm wondering if you can. I wanted to provide that context there and show mainstream media reports. Can you respond to this trip that General Bajwa, the head of the Pakistani military, took both to the U.S. and to Britain mere weeks before he retires?
Yeah, I think we should give credit to both of these pieces that you read, because much of it is quite accurate and is reporting quite accurately what the agenda is for in terms of what Washington demands from Pakistan. The issue right now, as we all should be aware of, is the incredible belligerence that the United States is showing towards China. It's completely insane, and for the rest of the world, why the U.S. is on this warmongering path. But caught in this whole struggle with China is, of course, Pakistan, which has had a very good and old relationship with China. But the issue right now, Ben, that I think people need to realize is that Pakistan is in a very weak position. You have countries, allies of the United States, like Saudi Arabia, like India, who have continued their cooperation with Russia and have pretty much said that, don't interfere in our business. And these are the very close allies, as you know, of the United States. Pakistan, which hasn't even started anything with Russia yet, but in some ways, the United States is now going after Pakistan because it sees Pakistan as the weakest kind of link in all of this Eurasian integration project, and to try to get Pakistan to either remove itself, distance itself from that Eurasian project. So that I think the articles you quoted are absolutely correct. The relationship with the Beijing, that is Islamabad's relationship with Beijing, is at the top of the minds of policymakers in Washington, and because our viewers should know that one of the major flagship projects of the Belt and Road Initiative is called CPEC, the Chinese-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that goes through Pakistan to the port of Gwadar, and that is in the Indian Ocean. And this has been a huge project, has been slowed down at times, often by terrorist elements and militants, funded by whom, who knows, one can guess, but that have targeted Chinese workers and so on. So there's that relationship with which the United States is incredibly irate about. And I think that it has conveyed in very stark terms to General Bajwa that relationship needs to be stalled, needs to be reduced. Ending it is obviously out of the question, but more and more roadblocks need to be placed in that relationship. It should not go any further than it is right now, and that certainly means slowing down any CPEC type of cooperation between Pakistan and China. That's certainly one of the items. But I also want to point out, Ben, that we should realize that General Bajwa has committed himself to not seeking a third term as the Chief of Army Staff next month. On November 28th, there's going to be appointed a new Chief of Army Staff. So for him to go to Washington, D.C. Just a few weeks before retirement was incredibly odd and unusual. I mean, people were just like, "What is this about?" And then critical voices started to ask questions about, what is he going there to reassure Washington, which has been quite nervous, by the way. I mean, I think that this is also another point. During all of these months since Imran Khan has been ousted, I've described to you the kind of clownish behavior of the new imported government in terms of putting terrorist charges on Imran Khan, something here, harassing and torturing some of senior members of his political party, etc. But all behavior that has just been incredibly embarrassing, almost, for the coup, for the Godfather himself, for Washington. So much so that you've had articles in Time magazine, in the New York Times, saying, "Look, what are you guys doing? You're making Imran Khan even more popular by the actions that you're undertaking." So even DC has been quite embarrassed so I think the kind of real adult in the room, the chief of army staff, decided to go to Washington and reassure Washington that, look, its demands will be met, whether it's regards to China, which is the major one. I think the two major one is China, and the other one you pointed out was the question of Palestine. This is something, and I think, Ben, that we, the Palestine Solidarity Movement in Pakistan, have been working on for the past now about 4 years, since it was first introduced into Pakistan. And now we have a greater context in that, wow, okay, this was a very calculated, orchestrated project that was being, forced upon the Pakistani people through media, through the military, causing these debates to take place within the media about whether we should recognize Israel, we should be less anti-Semitic, and therefore we should recognize Israel. All of this, nonsense, and the pressure coming, of course, from the Gulf countries, from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, from Washington, and of course from Tel Aviv. So we have been working against this tirelessly, but it's become so clear that the chunk of both the military and civilian elites are now more than ready to have that rapprochement and normalization of the relationship with Israel. Imran Khan was the only one standing in their way, as well as the Pakistani population. And so I think that for some odd reason, and there's a whole discourse we can go into in what the Israeli the Israeli role in American politics and so on. But for some odd reason, this continues to remain a major issue for Washington. That if Pakistan wants to get into the good books of DC, of Washington, if Pakistan wants to remain off that the Financial Action Task Force, which this list that supposedly targets countries that are supposedly funding terrorism, if it wants more aid from the IMF, World Bank, if all of these goodies that it may receive, including in terms of military hardware, then Israel is central to it. It must go along with that. And I really, in my mind, I really think that people in Washington, these Lloyd Austins and others, they're absolutely clueless. I mean, to force a government in Pakistan to try to do this, where an overwhelming amount of the population, 99.9%, are opposed to it. I don't know what they're thinking, but this was one of the other main items. The Russia thing, as you say, is very clear. I think they're kind of relieved that Khan is gone, and neither the chief Bajwa nor this new government has any um, uh, any intention to improve relationship with Moscow, which would have been a great thing, since the Cold War prevented the two countries from having a decent relationship, and this was the first time that they were going to attempt to improve that relationship. So that's incredibly unfortunate. And so these issues have been some of the issues. But I think that we also need to remind our viewers that, we in the larger Muslim world, there have not been leaders in recent times that have emerged that have spoken so frankly and openly on issues such as Kashmir, the oppression going on in Kashmir, oppression going on in Palestine, the way the Western countries have collaborated with local elites. Our old left-wing analysis of our comprador classes. He spoke about this in his UN speech, how they are facilitating the expropriation of the wealth from our countries. So that we have not had any leader, in recent times. So this was another major factor, I think, Ben, that the U.S. the United States, and its quislings sitting in Islamabad just want this character out of the political scene. But right now, it seems like Imran Khan may have the upper hand because his popularity ratings are actually much higher than he was than they were even when he was in power.
Yeah, I mean, this situation reminds me in some ways of the situation in Bolivia and in Brazil. In Bolivia, the U.S. backed a military coup in 2019 that overthrew the elected president Evo Morales, and his party is the Movement Towards Socialism Party. And after less than a year, 10, 11 months of the coup regime, there were finally elections held after 3 massive strikes and after the coup regime delaying elections 3 times. And the Movement Towards Socialism Party of Evo Morales became more popular and won by an even bigger landslide. And Evo Morales and his successor, Luis Arce, became even more popular. And similarly, in Brazil, I actually think if you have to look at the situation in Pakistan today, one of the most similar situations politically is Brazil. Of course, in Brazil, the Workers' Party was in power, first Lula da Silva for 2 terms, and then his successor, Dilma Rousseff. And there was a US-backed soft coup, a kind of political coup through the Congress, just like the political coup through the parliament in Pakistan. And that removed the elected president through an impeachment process backed by the US. And just as in Pakistan, in Brazil, it was against Dilma Rousseff. And they installed this unelected coup regime. And then the difference is in Brazil in 2018, there finally was an election. And what happened is the U.S. and the Brazilian oligarchy used the justice system to imprison Lula on fake charges. And that's what put Bolsonaro in power. Now, I don't see a Bolsonaro-style figure in Pakistan. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. But in terms of the lawfare, the judicial warfare that we saw in Brazil, it's the same playbook used to impeach Imran Khan and install this unelected coup regime. But I want to talk.
But here's the interesting thing, Ben. So the most recent thing, which you had mentioned at the beginning as well, last week, the Election Commission of Pakistan declared Imran Khan to be disqualified from running in elections because of this whole gifts quote unquote scandal thing. But of course now Imran Khan immediately went to the Islamabad High Court, which has said basically that no, they have no authority to disqualify him. He's not in parliament right now, and he can run in elections. So I mean that was pretty much resolved in 3 days. But you're absolutely right. This lawfare is one of the mechanisms, one of the last remaining mechanisms that they have to go after him, other than assassination, the way they assassinated this journalist in Kenya.
Yeah, I want to talk about this horrific assassination of Arshad Sharif, but before we get to that, I just want to focus a little more on the geopolitical element, because you mentioned Russia. And we've seen reports since the coup that the coup regime in Pakistan is actually sending ammunition to Ukraine. And this is a very interesting report in a website called the Eurasian Times. And it shows this article: Pakistan is supplying weapons to Ukraine with the help of British Air Force. And it shows this monitoring website that monitors flights. And it shows British aircraft going from Pakistan to Romania and going through Oman, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, through Egypt, and then up into Romania, going through Turkey as well and Bulgaria, up into Romania. And the allegation is that Pakistan is giving artillery shells to Ukraine because Ukraine is running out of ammunition. And allegedly, the Pakistan is giving artillery shells to Ukraine in order to fight this proxy war against Russia. This is an incredible escalation because, as we've talked about, it was Imran Khan who took a trip to Moscow and he met with Russian President Putin on February 24th, the day that Russia initiated this special military operation in Ukraine. Of course, Imran Khan didn't know that was going to happen.
Poor Khan, poor
Yeah.
Khan.
But it put Imran Khan, the Pakistani leader, right in the middle of the new Cold War. And to his credit, Imran Khan refused to join in the new Cold War. He maintained neutrality. In Moscow, Imran Khan signed economic agreements for cheap Russian oil and Russian wheat.
Absolutely.
And now Pakistan is
but also, Ben, a guest is arriving in the country on the day, and immediately the Washington and European capitals say condemn Putin right away. As soon as you see him on the tarmac, start condemning it. I mean, it was absurd. And any world leader would be annoyed by that type of behavior. And I think we discussed this. Even when he came back to the country, European Union leaders said, "Okay, now you're back. Now condemn him." To which he said, "We're not your slaves.
We are not
your slaves." And I will also emphasize that there was the Organization of Islamic Conference meeting in Islamabad right before Imran Khan was ousted, just to make it clear to viewers that it's not that Khan was supportive of an ongoing military conflict. In fact, he asked China, which was being represented actually at this conference, if they could help mediate between it. So it's not like Khan has always had a record of being anti-war, whether in Afghanistan, whether in the northwest of Pakistan, etc. So, but of course, his positions have always been misrepresented. But yeah, that's what happened at that point.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a key detail. And the fact that after this pressure, he openly said, "We're not your slaves." I mean, that was an incredible declaration. And I think so many countries in the global south, when they heard that, they were applauding because Imran Khan had the bravery to say what so many countries were thinking. But of course, there are diplomatic repercussions and political repercussions for making comments like that.
And he was the official prime minister at that point. He made that comment and he made his position clear. And the next day, the chief of army staff makes the exact opposite statement, condemns Russian invasion, goes on and on and on, which kind of tells you how seriously we should take any of this parliamentary nonsense in Pakistan.
Exactly. Now, well, another geopolitical question here, and that's related to these reports that of course, I should say before that.
Ben, I apologize. I'll interrupt you because I think that you were on to something quite important when you were speaking about the ammunitions that are now being sent from Pakistan to Ukraine. I've seen now multiple reports about that, and they seem to be very credible. And I think they are part of this larger project now by Islamabad, the new regime in Islamabad, and a few. I mean, but when we're talking about the military right now or the establishment, we are talking about the high command. We're talking about Bajwa and a few core commanders who are in the pockets of Washington and London. This is one of their goodwill gestures to convince the United States that, look, we're now back on board. We may have had tense times during the war on terror, and we some of our intelligence agencies may have gone rogue and blah blah blah, but everything is fine and dandy now. And I want to remind our viewers, just a few weeks back, they probably remember that Ayman al-Zawahiri was assassinated in Afghanistan.
Allegedly, I'll say
Yeah, yeah.
allegedly. I'm still a little skeptical of that.
Well, I mean, this is what was said, but in Afghanistan. But what we do know, whoever was assassinated, whether that was Zawahiri or whoever was assassinated, that drone missile went through significant Pakistani airspace. Uh, this would, of course, never would have happened under Khan, right? And you're absolutely right. I want to emphasize this again, that during the war on terror, at least up until 2011, the Osama raid, the U.S. had an active base in Pakistan from where it was launching drone strikes. And now what most of us are fearing is that once again, the military high command and the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence, they've conveyed through General Bajwa that we are once again ready and willing to help facilitate your aggressive behavior towards Afghanistan, towards China, towards whatever. Another report that we saw is that this group, ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement, that has carried out many terrorist actions in Xinjiang and in China, that Washington is explicitly told General Bajwa, do not interfere in their activities, and tell your Taliban friends in Kabul as well not to interfere in their activities. So this is the type of, this is the type of international terrorism. What else can you call it? That the United States wants to continue to happen, and wants the Pakistani government to allow it to persist without anything, without putting anything in its way.
Yeah, those are crucial points. And I just wanted to say earlier that the situation for average Pakistanis economically probably would have been better if those economic agreements that Imran Khan had made with Russia were allowed to go through. I should point out that Imran Khan, who's certainly no fan of India's leader Narendra Modi, who's very far right, his party, the BJP party, is very Islamophobic. But Imran Khan has actually, in recent speeches, praised India for maintaining its independent foreign policy and neutrality over the proxy war in Ukraine. And India has actually benefited from very cheap Russian oil and also very cheap Russian wheat, which has helped keep inflation down. Whereas in Pakistan, I know there's been runaway inflation, and
Absolutely.
people who are having trouble buying food and oil would have benefited from those agreements, which is why Imran Khan wanted those agreements with Russia. But
Absolutely. I mean, this is the point that Imran was making. Hey, look, your best friend India is is continuing its relationship full steam ahead with Russia. Now, of course, Saudi, the biggest kind of joke and scandal is the way the Saudis are behaving towards the Biden administration. And so these folks, and then that's why I emphasized at the beginning that I think that Washington really sees that Pakistan seems to be the weakest party right now in all of the Eurasian region, and that we need to start to try to use them once again to serve our agenda. I mean, I think this our viewers should know is very clear, because even our other allies aren't listening to us. But let's try to revive our old Cold War relationship with Pakistan, and get them to do the dirty work. The problem is that the people that are willing to do the Washington's bidding in the region are a very select few people of the military high command and the corps commanders. Some of the corps commanders, the all of these bunch of thugs who are the civilian politicians of the political parties. Yet the interesting thing this time, as I think mentioned last time as well, look, we're looking at now some months have gone by. Normally, in a very repressive country like Pakistan, one would have seen massive state military repression of these supporters coming out for Imran Khan, but one has not seen it. And one of the reasons, Ben, for that is that this first time in the history of the country, Imran Khan is more popular within the military than the chief of army staff himself. That is within the junior ranks of the officers and soldiers who have had to die for this America's war on terror. They are in love with Khan. They support Khan. So this has also been this conundrum that Bajwa has had to deal with throughout this period. He cannot go on this kind of massive repressive campaign because, so just like what happened in Vietnam, the guns may turn the other way.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. And I do want to ask you another question about that a little bit later, but I have one final question about geopolitics here.
Sure.
And then we can talk about Arshad Sharif, the assassinated journalist. But in terms of geopolitics, another issue that we've seen emerge in the past few weeks is this scandal, if you will, over the Biden administration approving $450 million of parts to modernize the F-16 planes that the Pakistani military has. And this is largely seen, of course, as the U.S. government supporting the coup regime, giving a green light. This also has angered India. The U.S. is playing this balancing act of trying to support India and Pakistan.
This given in the middle of massive floods
Yeah.
affecting Pakistan. Now all of a sudden they remember, oh, we need to, fix up your F-16s. That's the priority, right?
Yeah, I mean, I should have mentioned that earlier on. Unfortunately, I forgot. But we've seen horrible flooding that has impacted tens of millions of people in Pakistan, largely poor and working people. And the government, which is becoming bankrupt. I mean, actually, I should show really briefly here. I mentioned that article from Nikkei, and there's a really important graph here that shows Pakistan's foreign reserves that have been dwindling. This is a graph showing foreign currency reserves. In September 2021, there was around $25 billion of foreign currency reserves. As of September of this year, it's really around 12 or 13. So they've halved their foreign currency reserves. It means that they're going closer and closer to being bankrupt just in the past year. And of course, if you look, most of that decline in foreign currency reserves was after the coup. A lot of it was after the coup. And of course, that money is not really being spent to help average people, including, there's this horrible crisis of flooding. Instead, the government is spending $450 million modernizing its F-16s. And this comes at a time when Biden himself, we of course know that these decisions are not being made by Biden. His mental health is very poor. He's falling asleep in interviews. But Biden made this slip of the tongue where he referred to Pakistan as like the worst supporter of terrorism or whatever, the most
dangerous country on earth. And we're like, oh, we remember that from about 10, 15 years ago. And well, it was the war on terror back again. Doesn't Biden know that these are his own people sitting there in Islamabad? So, I mean, I agree with you. This is kind of like, I'm sure the rest of the agencies and administration were also like, hey, Biden, these are our people right now in power in Islamabad. Why are you continuing to use this old theme from maybe the Obama administration? He may have remembered Pakistan as the most dangerous country on earth.
Yeah, well, and of course, the point is that Biden made those comments while his administration is green lighting $450 million of plane parts for F-16s for the military. So, I mean, and this is actually a good segue because obviously this whole war on terror rhetoric of Pakistan being the most dangerous country is ridiculous. But there is a grain of truth in the sense that if you are a journalist, if you are a dissident, it is very dangerous. And this leads us to the horrible assassination of one of the most high-profile journalists in Pakistan, Arshad Sharif. He was a critic of the coup regime. He was doing reports on the corruption of the current coup regime and Shahbaz Sharif, and he fled the country. He feared for his life. Allegedly, he was going to go to the UAE, but he was kicked out of the UAE, and he went to Kenya, and he was assassinated in Kenya. What can you tell us about this horrific scandal that's rocking Pakistan right now?
Oh yes, it's this. The only good thing one can say is that there's no question that a good chunk of the media community has been appalled by what's happened to him, because he was a respectable anchor person and journalist for quite for decades, actually. So and people have been appalled. People have been saying, sometimes not so explicitly, but I mean, in their own kind of ambiguous language, that look, it's pretty clear that who are the ones that wanted this guy targeted. And right now, we know actually that what his main project was to investigate the corruption and the properties, etc., of both the Sharif family, as well as of the military high command and General Bajwa. Because of course, in our country, the idea is that yeah, fine, okay, we corrupt politicians, etc. That's true enough. I mean, there's no question mark there. But the generals and their wealth, that's never questioned. So he also wanted to investigate that aspect as well. And so you're messing with the two big guns. It reminds me of the article Top Gun visiting Washington. But you're messing with these, and they traced him all the way to Kenya. I mean, in a really a despicable behavior demonstrated by this regime. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. In this sense, press freedom and the harassment that has taken place of activists, whether they're PTI supporters or non-PTI supporters, all sorts of activists have been harassed, have been jailed, have been tortured. Many of the senior PTI leadership personnel have been taken in, detained, and tortured. And so there's no question that has been taking place inside the country. But I still think that it is nowhere close to the mass level it would be if it were not for the fact that close to 90% of Pakistan is with Imran Khan right now. So I mean, I don't think the ruling elites, both the military and civilian elites, are ready to confront a revolution right now.
Yeah, and this is actually a really good segue to help to start bringing this conversation to a close. Arshad Sharif, as you pointed out, I mean, he was very critical of the coup regime, but he wasn't a blind follower of Imran Khan. He was very critical of a lot of people. He was a good journalist, and
absolutely,
one of his last videos here from October 18th on his YouTube channel, where he was very popular, 420,000 subscribers. One of his last videos is titled "Imran Khan Raises Alarm Bells as Economic Hitmen Try to Take Pakistan Down," and it showed, his exposure of corruption in Pakistan and the important work he was doing as a citizen journalist. So let's just, as we conclude
Ben,
here,
and I make this point every single time so that all of our beloved leftist and progressive friends in Pakistan and all over the world, don't mistake this as some type of propaganda platform for Imran Khan. Imran Khan is not a revolutionary socialist. Imran Khan is probably learning about so many of these things on the go, on the job, in terms of, okay, what are regime change? What is a regime change? What is Washington all about? I mean, not to I sound condescending towards the man and his intelligence, but the point is, we don't we're under no illusion that he's a revolutionary socialist or anything like that. But what has become crystal clear and is that, and what's a question that must be asked, is that despite the fact that in the 3.5 years that Khan was in power, there was not much economic progress. In fact, there was a lot of suffering, also because of COVID. It was not all of kind of just Imran Khan's poor governance. There was COVID, there was inflation, global inflation, all sorts of things. But despite a less than mediocre kind of performance while in power, he still is able to mobilize the vast majority of the population on his side. That should tell you something about the first and foremost how much the people resent the other two political power parties, and how much perhaps they still maintain or retain some respect for the dignity, honesty, and perhaps the naivete of Khan in politics, but at least for his integrity and his honesty. So I want to make that point very clear so that people don't perceive this as just kind of, okay, this pro Imran Khan propaganda show. We are talking about developments that are taking place on the ground inside Pakistan, in which everyone now knows how corrupt and how bought off General Bajwa is. The political parties can't even show their faces. The ones that are running the show right now, they can't even show their faces in public without being, having tomatoes or potatoes or whatever thrown at them, and so on. And Khan is having these huge rallies in one town in the city after the next. So again, what I want to emphasize is that there are multiple reasons why a a working class community, very poor community, a somewhat middle class, a younger student population may be supporting Khan. There's multiple reasons why people may be supporting Khan in this reason, in this context, and one of those reasons is just they detest what they have seen in Pakistani democratic civilian politics for the past 30 years. That is the two parties, Pakistan Muslim League of the Nawaz Sharif group and the Pakistan People's Party.
Yeah, in this sense, I compared Pakistan to Brazil, and there are a lot of similarities with someone like Lula. But another
Right.
good
There were
example
there
is
were criticisms, genuine criticisms
for sure.
made of the Workers' Party when they were in power, and of Lula as well. And I shared in that, and I shared even more so in Imran Khan's term in power as well. So I think you're absolutely right. There is actually quite some similarities in the two
Yeah,
cases.
and I was going to say someone who's also very similar would be Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the president of Mexico. He also broke the back of the two-party dictatorship of the PRI and PAN parties. He created his own party, Morena. He's been criticized by a lot of the left, and I think that has been kind of ultra-left criticism that misunderstands the material conditions in the country. The Communist Party of Mexico declared him an enemy, which is absurd. So, I mean, there is a history of this kind of ultra-leftism not being able to, they miss the forest for the trees. I should remind people, who also wasn't a revolutionary socialist, Mohammad Mossadegh, the
Right.
first ever elected prime minister of Iran. The
Right.
U.S. didn't overthrow him because he was a socialist. The U.S. overthrew him because he was an independent nationalist who nationalized the oil reserves of Iran. Who also
Exactly.
wasn't a revolutionary
But
socialist was
Ben,
Jacobo Arbenz in
this is
Guatemala in
yeah,
1954.
this is perhaps the most infantile aspect of the discourse that one is quite saddened by. Seasoned kind of left intellectuals, etc. I mean, does the U.S. government, only target revolutionary socialists? I mean, when we were opposing the war in Iraq, were we defending Saddam Hussein as a champion of workers? Of course not. I mean, so it's been quite ridiculous. But again, I've written about this before. I do feel that it's kind of been some form of psychological envy on the part of many progressives and leftists in Pakistan, that why this guy has so much support and we don't. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that point's really important to understand. And, I never hide the fact I'm a socialist, I'm on the left, but I also understand that geopolitics is more complicated. And of course, we should support the left and all these things, but it's a mistake to misunderstand the contradictions of imperialism and say that, oh, well, we shouldn't support this political movement that is a massive grassroots movement with a huge part of Pakistan's working class behind it. It would be a major mistake, theoretically, politically, economically. It would be a huge mistake not to understand this important political moment. And what it reminds me of also is that in 2009, when the president of Honduras was overthrown, Manuel Zelaya, he was not a revolutionary socialist. He was a progressive nationalist. And actually, the process of the coup actually radicalized him, and he's now very revolutionary. And I think we're seeing a process where Imran Khan, he's moving toward a more revolutionary politics, and it'll be interesting to see if he can come back. He reminds me of Aristide in Haiti as well, right? Who Aristide
Yes.
in Haiti, he was a preacher, sorry, not a preacher, he was a Catholic priest, but he preached a liberation theology. And you could see a similarity in Pakistan with Imran Khan, who preaches a kind of a liberation theology version of Islam.
Well,
And
it's been very interesting. All of at the beginning of this ouster, we had many of our beloved leftist comrades speak about kind of the conservatism of Khan, particularly on gender issues, and going to the extent that his views are synonymous, like that with the Taliban, which is absolute nonsense. He said that, in fact, it's un-Islamic not to educate girls. But we heard this nonsense because they could get away with it in an alternative media in the U.S. that just is not doing its job too well sometimes. But here in Iran right now, we're hearing about all of the protests taking place. Many of them genuinely motivated by the horrific murder. But if you go to Imran Khan rallies, and genuinely the support base of Imran Khan, the majority, over 50%, are women, and those women neither wear no hijab, no niqab, no burqa, and neither hijab as well. I mean, some may wear hijab, but the majority do not. So how do you explain that, right? I mean, how do our friends explain that? So we just need to understand that these are the realities. We can attempt to speak about some fictional world, but the real reality is that he is popular amongst people that yes, you may think that are under the spell of false consciousness or whatever else, but as activists involved in these struggles for social transformation, political transformation, we have to take the ground realities seriously.
absolutely. And this leads me to the final question to wrap up our excellent discussion here today, Junaid. You mentioned that on October 28th, Imran Khan has announced basically the Pakistani Long March, right?
Yeah.
And he has made it clear that he's not going to accept the attempt to try to cancel him, right? We hear about cancel culture. Well, this is an attempt to cancel Imran Khan and prevent him from returning to politics. The
Right.
most popular politician in the country. So I always hate to ask these questions because when people ask me the question, I hate it. But I'm not asking you to have a crystal ball and predict the future, but just for people to have an idea going forward of what they should keep their eye on. What do you think are the important details and developments that we should keep our eyes on in the upcoming months with these protests and these marches planned?
Right. Just give me 1 second while I get my crystal ball. No. But yeah, no, I agree with you. These are always difficult, questions because of they involve predictions on and so many variables and so on. But seeing Khan get this far in sustaining that support. I think in these types of things, we often start to believe Orientalist myths about ourselves. That is that our population, they're not going to come out on the streets, they'll talk, etc. They're not going to do much, and of course the Pakistanis have defied that Orientalist caricature over the past many months. So that is the optimism in terms of Khan being able to make a dent in the system and compel the powerful forces in the regime, in both military and civilian, to go for early elections. It seems strong. It seems like that he has so much popular support that it would compel perhaps even the army chief to ask Shehbaz Sharif to go for early elections. But at the same time, you have politicians that know that they will be routed in in elections. So it may not be so easy. The only thing that I can say with confidence, Ben, is that we will be expecting an incredibly large, long march that's starting in Lahore and going on GT Road towards Islamabad, about driving wise, 4 or 5 hours or so. But obviously, it will take longer than that. But I think that Khan, one of the main strengths that Khan has had, and that the mobilizations have had throughout this entire process, is their very disciplined character, disciplined and peaceful character. I mean, you yourself know. I mean, you haven't been hearing about, oh well, these protests are taking place and violence and nothing. And even though they're happening every other day, so one could even expect, agent provocateurs coming in or something. But there has been no kind of violence. They've been very disciplined. So this is our hope lies in the fact that there is a clear demonstration of what the public mood is, and hopefully some of the powers that be may respond in the right way. Of course, the more gloomy picture is that they don't respond in that way and become slightly more repressive. But like I said, the forces with Khan are just so plentiful now, right now in Pakistan, that to undertake that type of repression against these mobilizations, I think will be rather counterproductive for the powers that be in Pakistan.
Well, I always want to thank you, Junaid. These conversations I enjoy deeply. I think a lot of people appreciate them as well. I've heard comments thanking you for your excellent, profound analysis. It's always a pleasure. I was speaking with Junaid Ahmad. He teaches law, religion, and world politics in Islamabad, Pakistan, and he's the director of the Center for the Study of Islam and Decoloniality. Junaid, do you want to plug any work? Where can people follow you?
People should follow me on Ben Norton's.
Yeah, I'm not a big social media guy, which I
Multipolarista.
appreciate. I wish I could detox from social media like you.
On Ben's Multipolarista and other places, whether it's Counterpunch, Consortium News, so on and so forth. But Ben, I just want to thank you, and I know that so many of my students would like to thank you as well. The work that you're doing, we learn so much from. It's just incredible. You're like what we used to say about Chomsky. There can't be one Chomsky; must be at least 20. So we think of you in the same way. There must be about 20 Ben Nortons who can do all of this amazing investigative work. So thank you, Ben, for having me.
I mean, those words mean a lot. Mutual admiration here. Thank you so much. And for anyone watching or listening, if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/multipolarista. And of course, multipolarista.com, where I have all my reporting here. And I want to thank Junaid, and I'll definitely have him back on soon to talk about the latest developments in Pakistan and overall the role of this country, this very important, very large country with one of the largest populations in the world, in this process of building a multipolar world, in this process of Eurasian integration. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people overlook the importance of Pakistan, and that's why I try to report on its role in geopolitics as much as I can, and also, the role of the U.S. government in destabilizing it. I think, we have a responsibility to shine light on that. So if people like this, they can go to multipolarista.com/support. And I will see everyone next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ben.